Something new is fucked up in my world every day. If it hasn't shown up by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm sort of curious what it's going to be. It's in the middle of the Christmas season. The company is Sphero, which sells a consumer product. It's a super hot holiday sale thing. I get a panicked call from Paul Barbarian, who's the CEO. He says, I think everybody's safe, but the second floor of our building just collapsed. And we can't get into the building because the fire people are here and they won't let us go back into the building to get any of our stuff. What do I do? And I said, I don't have any idea what you do.
Hey, it's Michael. If you've been on a Zoom with me lately, you'll notice that you have my full attention. It's because I'm not taking notes. Instead, I rely on Fellow, an AI meeting assistant, to take notes for me, along with tracking action items and decisions, handling recordings, transcripts, and summaries all in one secure platform. It's kind of like magic. Built with security and privacy at its core, Fellow is the only AI meeting assistant that thousands of leaders and organizations trust to capture meeting notes and recordings while keeping your data safe. They're so confident that you'll love it, they're offering an insane deal to you all, Between Two COOs listeners. 90 days of unlimited AI-powered note-taking and recording completely free. Visit fellowai/COO to sign up today and experience the AI meeting assistant trusted by leaders everywhere. Hello and welcome to Between Two COOs. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and today's guest is Brad Feld, one of the most respected and enduring voices in venture capital. Brad is a partner and co-founder at Foundry and has been investing in early-stage startups for over 35 years. He co-founded Techstars, helped shape the Boulder tech scene, and runs Anchor Point Foundation with his wife, Amy Batchelor. He's backed some of the most iconic companies in tech, including Zynga, Fitbit, SunGrid, and MakerBot, and he's been writing candidly about entrepreneurship and mental health since 2004, long before VC Twitter was a thing. Brad's here today to talk about his latest book, Give First, a philosophy and a practice that's really shaped not only how he invests, but how he lives. The book captures decades of lessons on mentorship, trust, and building communities that give more than they take. He's someone who thinks long-term, speaks plainly, and doesn't shy away from the hard stuff, whether it's company building or personal growth. Brad, great to have you here.
Delighted to be here, Michael.
So our paths have overlapped in so many ways over the years, and I want to kick things off by sharing the first time I actually met you in person. I don't think you'll remember it, but I was working with John Fox and Isaac Kayat on Intense Debate, which was one of those original Techstars companies. Which we ended up selling to Automatic. You were an angel investor, and we had just gotten our first batch of company t-shirts, which is like a major milestone for any broke startup, right? And I was in charge of our blog. So we came up with this idea to hand out these shirts to folks around Boulder, snap a photo and post them. And when I did that, most people would just like throw the shirt over whatever they were wearing. And I remember this incredibly well. I walked into your office and I remember this incredible, like colorful painting of Yoda on the wall. And I was like totally mesmerized, and then turned around and made eye contact. And without a word, you just like ripped off your shirt, adjusted, and then like pulled the shirt on. And then you looked at me and you just went in like a Yoda voice, like, picture you take. And so I took this picture and I left thinking like, that was one of the weirdest but most delightful investor moments I've ever had. So,
well, there you go. Great first impression, right? Nothing like
great first impression. Well, that's the thing, right? I feel like so many people have like these unexpected Brad Feld stories, and it struck me that you're kind of like the Bill Murray of venture capital, where there's this like mythical and unpredictable quality about how you shape people's lives.
I would totally take, by the way, I'm a huge Bill Murray fan, notwithstanding his challenges the last couple of years with whatever happened or didn't happen or what everybody was confused about. But I have loved Bill Murray since I was a kid. Like that humor is my humor.
Yes.
And the idea of this sort of elusive, mysterious, just does his own thing, doesn't care about what anybody else thinks. Love it.
Well,
I'll take it. Thank you for the compliment.
Let's talk about Give First. First, for listeners, what is Give First? How is it different than those other things, pay it forward and giving back?
So Give First is a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not a set of rules. It's not a thing you have to do. It's a philosophy, just like a lot of other philosophies, where you can incorporate some of the ideas into how you are or not, depending on what you like from it. For me, what I have tried to do with this concept over time, well, really the first time I put it in words was in the book Startup Communities, in a little section called Give Before You Get. It's one paragraph in the book. And this is 2012. I was trying to make the point that as founders in a startup community, if you want to get your startup community really moving, you have to be able to put energy into it, or you have to be willing to put energy into it without defining what you're going to get back. And as part of that, I said very clearly, it's not altruism. You expect to get something back. You just don't know when, from whom, over what time period, in what form. And so you get this sort of critical mass putting energy into a startup community. All of a sudden, amazing things start to happen. And it was from the experience that by 2012, I'd had in Boulder going back, I moved to Boulder in 95, but I started thinking about this and acting around this around 2006 when Techstars got started. That was the essence of the starting point. The interesting and important part of this, as it evolved over time, is I started to understand that it linked to three ideas that pay it forward's a good contrast to it. It's a cousin. Pay it forward's a good idea. It's powerful. But pay it forward is transactional. Someone once did something for me, therefore I need to pay it forward. It's obligatory. It's this sort of construct that, you sort of carry with that emotional resonance versus a non-transactional dynamic. Give first is non-transactional. It's like you're just willing to put some energy into things. It's not because somebody did something for you. It's not because you have an obligation to do it. It's not because you've defined what you're going to get out. The second is this concept of positive sum, which I've been talking about again since that Startup Communities book, in contrast to zero sum being win-lose relationships. There's a winner and a loser. Of course, there's many things in life that are transactional, many things in business that are transactional, and many things in both that are win-lose. But if you're engaging over time in a system of some sort, you can actually have positive sum relationships where both parties benefit from the interaction and the system as a whole gets better. And one of my favorite, I'm a huge tennis fan. I used to be a big tennis player as a kid. One of my favorite non-business examples for people who challenge that idea of positive sum. And they say, well, sports is zero sum, like there's a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
My response is think about tennis over the last 20 years with Nadal and Federer. And toss Djokovic in the mix too. Those three, every time that any of them played, one won and one lost. That's how a tennis match works. Mm-hmm. But the relationship the three had was positive sum, and it elevated each of their games. They each got better through playing with each other and having that level of competition. But they so elevated the system they participated in, which was the sport of tennis. 20-something years ago, the sport of tennis was popular, but it wasn't anywhere near as popular as it is today. Interestingly, if you are a tennis fan in history and you see, Billie Jean King in the stands today, she's just an amazing, amazing leader and advocate for many things, including the sport. If you go back to her time, women's tennis wasn't it was a professional thing, but it was just so subordinate to men's tennis. And you think about women's tennis today, which in a lot of cases is even more exciting than men's tennis. And same kind of thing, you have these amazing competitors who lift each other up, who view it as a long-term system. So that notion of positive sum, and then links to the last thing I was just describing, which is multi-turn, right? You're not having a single turn experience, one tennis match. You're having a long interaction over a long period of time. So these three ideas are a key part of Give First. And if you think about something like Pay It Forward, it's transactional. It's you're giving something to somebody else. You're not expecting that you're going to get anything back. So it is this sort of one-way thing. And ultimately, it can be single turn. Think about the number of times where somebody justifies, well, I paid it forward by doing that one thing, rather than actually like engaging for a long period of time. So I tried to condition it as a different thing. Again, philosophy, it's not spend 100% of your energy this way. It's not that you would never do transactional relationship, transactional dynamics. It's not that you would ever have situations, that were truly win-lose. But you try to sort of embrace this philosophy across a lot of the things that you're doing. And then in the book, of course, I intersect that with mentorship and the concept of mentorship. And so I've woven these two thoughts together in terms of how one can engage with others and engage with systems that they care about.
Well, let's talk about the transactional part that you just discussed. It's not altruism, right? Give first, you expect something in return at some point from someone who knows when, but doesn't that kind of blur the lines with the transactional aspect of the relationship? If you know at some point it's going to come around in some form?
Yeah, I think I don't think it does, because you say in some form, in some consideration, but you also don't know who it's going to come from. So the transactional relationship isn't between me and you when we're engaging in some way in this construct. It's with whatever system exists around it. Probably, use this podcast even as an example. Like, why am I doing this? Well, I know you for a long time. I like you. I just wrote a book. I'm happy to do podcasts. I've done a lot of podcasts. Why do I keep doing podcasts? I don't know. Do I expect that I'm going to get something out of it? Well, I'm not going to get anything financial out of it. Maybe somebody will buy some books, but that's not even really a financial transaction in the context of, the effort that goes into these things.
Yeah.
But kind of my view is that getting this message out will have some impact somewhere in a good way. That's worth it. Helping you with the thing you're doing, which is doing a podcast series and start trying to help other people get their minds around different concepts is additive. So again, is it blurry? Of course it's blurry, because of philosophy. Philosophy should be a little bit blurry, but I don't think it stomps on the non-transactional construct here, because you're essentially, again, I describe in the book, or the language I use for this is you're willing to, engage in a system. You're willing to engage in a relationship without defining up front what you're going to get out of it. And so you really have to shift your mindset in those situations. And I think everybody does engage in non-transactional relationships, even people who are extraordinarily transactional. However, if the amount of engagement that's transactional is 99.9%, I think you're missing, my view, one is missing a lot of opportunities to have experiences that are unexpected, that are random, that go in different directions, that end up giving back to you in ways that, you didn't expect.
Hang on. First off, by the way, the listenership of Between Two COOs, it's rabid. This is going to skyrocket Give First to New York Times.
That's awesome. Even if it does, anybody who's written a book, it's just a different way. Anybody who's an investor who's written a book knows it's a non-economic relationship. Yeah, sure. The reason, what it's kind of fun. Why do, at least for me, why have I written 9 books? I haven't written 9 books to, make more money.
Yeah.
I've written 9 books because I had some ideas that I thought would be worth putting in form that was long form. Like, as somebody who has, blogged for a long time and written a lot of stuff, it's a difference between writing a 140 character tweet uh, which now I guess you can write longer, or a LinkedIn thing, or a blog post.
Hmm.
Now you're another level where you actually write like a short essay. Um, that's different than writing a edited article for somebody that edits something that actually, fact checks what you do.
Yeah.
Like keep on going. By the time you get to a book, it's a lot of work to put the idea together in a way that you feel both is accessible. Maybe it's multiple things: accessible, useful to other people, and in a comprehensible way.
Hmm.
And that's something in terms of being someone who's always enjoyed writing, enjoyed trying to put the ideas together. The way I learn is by writing. And so, I learn a lot. Just, I listen well, I get a lot of inputs, but really until I write it down, I don't solidify the construct. So
Yeah.
in some ways, writing these books for me has been a very selfish act of trying to really work out on paper what my real thinking is,
Hmm.
or what my real thoughts are around a particular idea. That's what this book is. When you finish the book, and there's a story behind every book. This book, I wrote a first draft 3 years ago. And after I got feedback from 20 or so people on the first draft, I had a lot of work to do to make it a good book. It's the process I go through. Um, but I didn't feel like putting the energy in. I wasn't
Mm.
feeling it. So I stuck it on the shelf for a while and didn't know whether I'd ever finish it. I just hadn't worked out the ideas very well. I didn't feel good about like a bunch of the pieces. They didn't make sense to me yet. And I just didn't have the energy for a variety of reasons to do it. When I took it off the shelf about a year ago and just reread it and thought to myself, I reread it to think, is there something good here or not?
Yeah.
My reaction to rereading it is there's some good shit here, but I got a lot of work. And 6 months later, I had worked out the ideas in a way that I felt were clear, compelling, I was proud of. But it also, again, for me, had resulted in me really understanding what was floating around in the ether in my brain and the conversations I was having, but that I hadn't really worked out. So that's the goal. Um, at least for me, people have different goals for different things, but that's how I've approached each of these. And if you look at the different books I've written over time, and you go back in time, and you look at startup communities, you look at venture deals, right?
Yeah.
You look at startup boards. I mean, these were a bunch of ideas, lots of stuff that I blogged about, but I hadn't really put it together in a coherent, comprehensive narrative. It was just a bunch of ideas, like so much that as I think founders are encountering every day that range from very short things to essays that's like, geez, all this shit contradicts itself. And
Mm.
who is this person versus that person? And it's part of an idea, but it's not the whole idea. Or in some cases, absolutely brilliant, 200, 2,500 word essays that nail the whole topic. Like, the Mark Twain cliche, if I had time, I would have made it shorter. Um, but that's part of that. That's part of, I mean, you didn't ask the question, what's the motivation? But I think it's an important underlying thing. By the way, I think that's true for most people who are trying to create something, whatever that something is, whether it's a piece of art, a piece of software, product, a company, right? You're doing it. If you're doing it just to make money, that- okay, whatever. And that's fine. I'm not going to
Yeah.
judge it, but it'd be harder if the only reason you're doing it is to make money. If you're doing it because it solves a problem you have, or, I like to say you were put on planet Earth to work on this problem right now. Maybe not for the rest of your life, but right now, this is the problem you were put on planet Earth to work on. That's so awesome to be able to live in that zone.
Well, I was going to ask, excuse me, there's this underlying narrative within the book that seems to coalesce around your efforts to find happiness and greater meaning in life, and that the philosophy rather of give first has had a profound impact on that. And it sounds like, I was going to ask, is that a fair characterization? It kind of sounds like maybe that's there.
I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
On 40 podcasts or 50 podcasts later, I think that's the first time somebody said that. So nice job.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
it lands well with me. I mean, since the beginning of humans, I think humans have searched for meaning.
hmm.
And I think that for many people, that's an essential part of the good and the bad aspects of their life, right? The
Mhm.
challenging moments, you're searching for meaning. The positive moments, you're searching for meaning. And success, you look for meaning. And failure, you look for, like, it's, whether you're religious or not religious, you search for meaning through whatever the spiritual tradition you have. And so I like the concept that for me, working through this book is some search for meaning at this moment with the reflection on 40 years of business, 40
Mhm.
years of technology, whether it's the first company I started or all the investing I've done, and then trying to find a through line that's consistent that I could, yeah, it's a phrase that I could sort of codify in my own philosophy, my own way of thinking about what gives me meaning.
Hmm.
In an environment, again, over 40 years where I've had lots of successes and lots of failures, where I have consciously tried to approach it not as not as a ascetic where, I don't care about what anything else is or what anybody else thinks or whatever, but where I've tried to model my behavior in a way that's internally consistent, even in the failure, even in the disappointments, even in the broken relationships, of which, over 40 years, of course, you're going to have plenty of those. If somebody
Mhm.
says, yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years and everything I've done has been successful, like, they're just full of shit.
Well,
Um,
let's talk
so
about that.
meaning is a
Yeah.
good one. Meaning is a
Oh,
good
okay.
one.
All right. Good. And well, I'm glad I said something different.
Well,
But
it was. I mean,
yeah,
again, I hadn't thought about it before, so thanks for putting me on that. I mean, maybe I had, but it hadn't
sure.
come out like in that
Mm.
direct of a statement. So well done.
Well, I want to talk about the experiences that you've had. One of as I was thinking a lot about mentorship and the challenges, the rewards, the frustrations that I've had both as a mentee and a mentor. Sometimes you see someone, and it's so frustrating. They're about to drive off a cliff, and they are. You've seen it before. Like, so much of what you do as an investor is all about pattern recognition. You try to guide them, they disregard, and then predictably they drive right off that cliff. Like, how do you deal with that? Because for me, it's oh well, if you're not going to listen, then why are we doing this type of thing?
Two parts to it, and I just one caveat at the beginning. I personally dislike, I don't hate, but I dislike the phrase pattern recognition. I think it's
Hmm.
used as a cliche or a crib sheet or something, like it's an abbreviation for a lot of people. Not everyone. There's lots of people who use it in a productive way, but for many people, it's used as an abbreviation for not thinking hard about a problem.
Hmm.
It's this kind of like, oh, well, I have great pattern recognition. So, like,
Yeah.
the worst example of this, I have pattern recognition. I'm extrapolating from an example of one. So I had one experience and therefore everything else in the world works this
Right.
way. I'm like, maybe that one experience was the canonical experience, but
Sure.
unlikely.
Canonical.
Well,
You're
I had a
definitely
bunch of,
software.
right.
Canonical.
I definitely had these, nerd factor, right? Nerd alert.
Love it.
Um, you have these situations. Some say, well, I've had all these experiences, and here's the pattern matching from all these experiences. But they've
Right.
had all these experiences in one domain, or with one set of people, or in one geography. Like, okay, uh, useful input, like the
Mhm.
categorization of that's useful, but to then not have critical thinking around that as a result is, I think, I think it's a weakness. So
Hmm.
I personally try not to use that phrase to describe what I'm thinking about. Again, it's in the category of don't
Sure.
like versus hate. I
If
hate, for example, the phrase value added. I
I
think that's a
sure.
disgusting phrase. Um, uh, in, in the context of the specific where, okay, I see something, my view is the founder is about to drive off a cliff.
Mhm.
And I want to engage in a way with that founder to try to help them understand that I believe they might drive off a cliff because I could be wrong.
Mhm.
And that I think they should think hard about what a cliff is, where it is, and what driving off it implies and could result in.
Mm.
It's a tactic that I think is effective mentorship. And it's something I learned in my early 20s from my experience with Young Entrepreneurs Organization and a thing called a forum group that's part of YEO and YPO, which is a confidential group of 10 people that meet once a month, same group. You're all peers. And there's a process. And part of that process is, somebody presents the issue that they're struggling with. And then you ask a bunch of questions. It's a very Socratic information gathering of the person. You don't ask questions of each other. You ask the questions of the person presenting the problem. And then at the end of the process, you give an example from your own experience that you think is relevant to the problem. Not necessarily a solution to the problem, just relevant to the problem. It's extraordinarily powerful
Mm.
because it's not at the other end of the spectrum would be, hey, you're about to drive off the cliff. Let me tell you what to do so you don't drive off the cliff. You should do this. And the problem with that is that the person saying all those things, number one, might be wrong about the cliff,
Mhm.
might be wrong about the data and the inputs that the person's considering as they're figuring out what to do. Maybe the person wants to drive off the cliff because they have a car that can fly
That'd
and
be
they
really cool.
haven't, and you haven't had, yeah, it would be cool, but you haven't had that experience yet. Like there's a whole bunch of different things in the mix that
Yeah.
you, the person giving the feedback that presumably is the experienced person or the mentor doing. Instead, it's so much more powerful to say to the person, Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about an experience I had. Let me tell you about a couple of experiences I had. Let me ask you a couple of questions to make sure I understand exactly the context of what's going on before I tell you a story, because the story I tell you might have nothing to do with the actual thing I'm observing. So, um, you know, I I have found over a long period of time that most people that are founders have a pretty allergic reaction to someone saying you should. And when I say that, I think of like the Bernie Sanders finger wagging, you should.
Right.
And my father saying to me, pointing with his finger, you should. I'm like, no, like the sort of emotional reaction a lot of people have, the inner voice is like, oh fuck you, I'm not gonna do that. The outer voice is obviously resistance or defensiveness or a challenge. It's like, no, I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. You should
Mm.
figure that out for yourself, right? And I'll use should in that context. Like, I have no idea what you should do. You figure it out. Here's my experience for you to learn from if you choose.
Mhm.
And you're perfectly free to totally ignore me or decide I'm wrong or decide I don't have a frame of reference because I'm often wrong. Everyone is. I might not have the proper frame of reference because I don't have all the information you have. I might actually not really understand all the information that
Mm.
you have in a way. So, all I can do as a mentor is give you more information to consider with context around that information, try to elicit more information from you. So, whatever context I give you can be even better.
And as I think about it, if I look at the situations where I've been frustrated, the thing that I probably need to do a better job at is looking at it and saying, okay, did the stories that I shared with them actually, were they effective? Did I articulate them properly in a way that would help guide versus tell? And maybe
Well,
I need to improve. Yeah.
it's a good thing to call out. There's a story in the book that you probably, since you read the book, remembers the Bart Lorang story where,
Mhm.
I'm trying to do this in a board meeting, right? We're in a board meeting and, Bart, who's the CEO of this company, Full Contact, has a real problem that he's trying to figure out how to solve. And he presents it well to the board. And, there's a little back and forth and a couple questions asked. And eventually I tell a story to try to give an example of something similar in a different situation, what they did. And, you're telling a story. It's just my stories are all too long. It's genetic. I got it from my dad. So everything's 20% too long. And, I can kind of, I can read the room okay. Even when I'm telling a story, I can kind of tell, it's not really landing. Then another board member takes my example and goes in completely the wrong direction with my
Mm.
example. So my example didn't map to whatever and you could see Bart getting more and more frustrated. And, we ask a couple more questions and then I try again. I tell another story. And this time I think actually the thing I'm doing this time is, I don't know, it's been calibrated by everything. And, now Bart's pacing back and forth in the front of the room, getting very frustrated. And he finally turns to me and he says, Brad, I know you know what the answer is. Will you just fucking tell me the answer? and and I did, and sometimes that's what it is. I don't remember whether my answer was right or wrong. I don't know whether we solved the problem or not. I can't remember. It's too long ago. But it's not that that's the only way to do it. Sometimes you should be directive. Sometimes the other person wants you to be directive. It's especially true if you think about it from a managerial perspective. A lot of times people want the boss, whoever the manager is, to be directive and say, well, okay, here's the decision. We should do this, 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 and this.
Mhm.
And so a lot of these constructs are not necessarily like how to be a better manager. It's much more around this notion of how to engage as a mentor, as a board member, as somebody who's not managing, who's not functionally responsible for executing and for the outcome of the thing.
The power dynamic that you're talking about can change the equation here, even though, good management in my experience has always been guiding people to, help them solve their problems versus solving it for them. But so often that can get lost outside of that mentor mentee relationship and more in terms of the boss employee dynamic. I don't know if that rings true at all.
It does. It does. I learned very early, in my mid 20s, I learned that if you were trying to get, I was running a company. We were a software company. If you want somebody to be committed to the outcome, they have to define what that goal and desired outcome is. If you tell them what the goal and desired outcome is, they're not committed to it.
Mhm.
And so the difference between someone, saying to somebody, this must be done this way on this date with this stuff, versus having them say to me, as their manager, here's what I'm going to get done on this day with this stuff. It case B, where they're defining it, they're so much more committed to it. And the result is their work quality will be better, but they'll also work more and they'll work harder and they'll actually believe in the outcome versus the other, which is like, well, the constraints that, Brad defined are totally ridiculous and I can't possibly achieve this. And so fuck it. I'll just do my best, but I'll whatever. Like that dynamic plays across, I think, all of everything, which is if you can engage with other people in a way where they are defining what they are going to be committed to. You don't have to accept, again, as a manager, face value what that is. You challenge and you go back and forth, but it still has to be under their purview what gets defined. And it's
Mm.
very interesting if you look at contemporary software development versus software development from 30 years ago. 30 years ago, there was this thing called waterfall development where somebody wrote a specification and the specification could be hundreds of pages long. And it was written by somebody that was then tossed over to the engineers and said, get this done by Friday. And it was a very ineffective way to do software development versus Agile, which when Agile started to appear in the 2000, I don't know, 2003, whenever it started to become
Mhm.
really a thing, maybe 2005 even, I don't know. That shifted the dynamic a lot. We're on a very rapid cadence every 2 weeks or every month, whatever maybe every week. The team that was responsible for building things sat down and decided what they were going to do and what the priorities are and what they were going to get done in this constrained time frame. So the constraint became a time frame, but the team decided what would fit in that time frame versus it be dictated to them.
Mm.
I think that's generally applicable across, frankly, all management and all leadership.
It- it's such a fine line to learn. It's
Hard.
very difficult. And so much of it, I mean, you talk about EQ in your book, and you definitely have to have EQ, I think, in order to be an effective manager, an effective leader, perhaps an effective mentor. Some of the things that, like, we teach, like, in so many situations, we teach tactics or how to handle a situation, how to navigate a challenge, but, like, the emotional intelligence aspect in developing that rarely gets that same attention. In fact, I only actually got to start developing it when I started working with an executive coach. My question here is just, you know, how should people be thinking about building their EQ? And why don't we talk more openly about it in these contexts?
Maybe a preamble to the answer is that there are multiple different ways to be successful and effective as a manager. There are some people who think that the way to be effective is a very top-down command and control, directive approach. And there are probably, I expect there are plenty of people in the world who, as people who work, thrive on that approach or are attracted to that approach, want that to be the environment. Um, so, my preamble or my bias is I don't like that,
Hmm.
right? Like that doesn't work for me. It's never worked for me when I've found myself in those situations. And so, from my frame of reference, while you can build very effective organizations with that approach for some period of time, it's not satisfying to me. And I think you can build very effective organizations a different way that result in people uh, defining their success differently, where the success might include a broader range of characteristics in the outcome. So just say that generically, which is
Hmm.
just, to go back to this idea of philosophy. These are not rules. I don't have the Brad Feld way of doing things is the right way is not my goal. My goal is here's some ideas to think about it that I hope are additive to what you're doing and take and choose from what you wish. Um, your comment about a coach, I think is critically important. I think every leader should have a coach. Every serious athlete that can afford a coach has a coach. Even aspiring athletes in different fields often have a coach. When I'm serious about any of the running activities that I want to do, when I go through a phase where I'm trying to train for a marathon or some kind of longer adventure, I'll always add a coach back into the system for me because it's very valuable to have somebody watching, observing, who knows you, who has their own experiences that can guide you towards being better and more effective at what you do. Now, in, in the world of entrepreneurship, there's multiple categories of people who can help a founder or a leader or a manager with these different characteristics, right? One, of course, is a mentor. The dynamics of the mentor and how a mentor engages with you is different than how a coach engages with you. You don't pay a mentor. The mentor doesn't have an obligation to help you. You don't have a confidential, continual relationship with the mentor, although those are effective mentorship characteristics for it to be confidential and for it to be continual. Um, but coaches have that. In addition, you pay a coach. It's a transactional relationship. The coach views it as, I have a job to do this. It's not in some ways different from that perspective than a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, but it's a different set of activities. It's a different frame of reference. It's a different skill set, frankly, that the coach needs to have. Some of it overlaps with what a therapist would have, but it's different. And then, you have another category of person in the mix, which is an advisor, which is somebody who's very experienced, presumably, that you're paying to help you with a very specific thing. And it really, if you look at this category of people that are helping, and you're talking specifically about EQ. My own experience is that as an individual leader, if you're hungry to improve on this dimension and be more effective at it, a coach is probably the most powerful tool, kind of tool. The second, frankly, is probably a therapist,
Have to
because
go that route.
so much of what you're trying to do when you're exploring how to be more effective with what's categorized as EQ or emotional quotient, or, the soft stuff of management, or whatever people want to call it as. Step one is on knowing yourself better,
Hmm.
like understanding you, because that's really it. For me, I like to say, I believe everybody is the hero of their own story. You're the hero of the Michael story. I'm the hero of the Brad story. Um, does anybody give a shit about the Brad story, the Michael story? Up to them, right? But I give a shit about my own story. You give a shit about your own story. Well, how can you actually really know your story if you don't know yourself and understand what you're doing that are successful things on the path of whatever your own hero journey is, or what's getting in your way? And so many people wander through life never knowing those things because they didn't put the energy into understanding themselves. A coach can help with some of that,
Mhm.
but not the next level down. And the next level down has a lot to do with, things that are hard to talk about, things that are hard to confront, things that take a long time to understand, work through. And, the way I describe therapy, it's going, for me, it was going to Planet Brad for 50 minutes once a week. I pay this guy. He has to listen to me. He has no choice. I can spend the whole 50 minutes saying whatever I want or saying nothing, and he has to sit there for the 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And if he's any good, he will, nudge and guide and occasionally challenge and take me to a place, help me get to a place, not take me, help me get to a place that I can get deeper and deeper into some of these things to get some insights into what actually matters to me, what makes me tick, what's getting in my way, what really was hurtful or harmful to me in situations, and how I could look at them in a way that maybe wasn't hurtful and harmful back to the other person and continue to be hurtful and harmful to me, stuff like that. Coach has a harder time with that. Coach is more around the practical skills to develop to be effective, along with the self-inquiry, understanding what makes you tick.
Right.
An advisor's job is just to do a thing. You say, hey, help me with this thing. And a mentor is this non-transactional. You can't say, hey, mentor, help me with this.
Hmm.
That's not really, I mean, you can as an individual, and a mentor might say, what do you need help with? That's actually a good invitation to say, I'm really struggling with. However, again, most mentors are going to have a different relationship with you than the clinical relationship or the professional coaching relationship. So just knowing what you're getting and frankly, what you're ready for and what you want. And I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast and say, that's great. I don't want therapy. I don't want to go deep on myself. I don't want to know more about how I think. I don't want to figure those things out. That scares
Scary.
me. Or
Yeah,
maybe it doesn't
can be
scare me.
scary.
Just like, no, I got to figure it out. I'm good. Hey,
Yeah.
cool. No problem. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that every human being should do that. I'm suggesting it as a way to think about how to be better and more effective at some of these things because they've been helpful to me. They've helped me be better and more effective, and therefore maybe they can help others be more effective.
And if you're lucky enough to work with a really great therapist, listening and thinking about how they got you someplace is fascinating. Like, there's no one that asks better questions to guide you to a place than a really, really good therapist. And it's kind of interesting because I always I'm lucky enough to have found a really great therapist, and afterwards I'll think about, like, how the hell did we end up here? Because that's not where I was when I first came into this session. So it's pretty fascinating.
I think
Well,
some of it's the skill set. I'll add one thing to it though. I
yeah.
think it's also the context. Right. You don't get there in one session or two sessions. Like I've had some, I won't say who, somebody once said to me, I had my one therapy session and the therapist said I didn't need therapy. Another person that I know went to therapy like 3 or 4 times and said, yeah, my therapist said I was good. It's bullshit. Like they teach you day one of therapy is day one of therapy school
Yeah.
is not to say something like that.
Yeah.
You
Because
know,
the therapist didn't want to treat them. They're like, my God, this asshole, there's no way I can work. You're cured.
could have been some of that, right? Could have been like, I'm not the right one for you. You need something different than me. So it's for the context, because it's just another thing that I want to try to end on. The power of these things is trust. The power of a mentor-mentee relationship is trust.
Mm.
The magic trick in a mentor-mentee relationship is that they become a peer relationship. You learn the mentor learns as much from the mentee.
Mm.
So you end up over time really learning from each other. In a coaching or therapy context, it's trust. You start to have this repeated experience where you, as the person going to the therapist or going to the coach, starts to trust the other person. And you let down some of whatever your natural shields are.
Mhm.
And then you can get deeper into some of the issues because you yourself are able to get deeper into the issues versus the other person is just so amazing at guiding you and pulling you into it.
Well, I completely lost track of time, and I think I'm losing you now. I didn't even get to ask my one and favorite question.
I'll
But
give you, I'll give you extra 5 minutes.
all right. Well, the question I always ask at the end is, we've all, and this is great for you because we've all had those moments in the seat where we see something totally crazy, or as you say, I've seen something that is going to fuck up my day to day, and you thought to yourself, I never thought I'd see that. Is there one that you can share? That's just, it sticks out. That is, and so often these things are protected by confidentiality agreement. That's why I say, is there one you
Lots
can
of
share?
them. You know, my it's a blog post that regularly gets sent back to me. Somebody runs into it and says, wow, this was so helpful to me today. And the title is "Something New is Fucked Up in My World Every Day." And the key word is new, right? And kind of my quip now that I use is, if it hasn't shown up by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm sort of curious what it's going to be. So it doesn't necessarily fuck up my day. It's just a thing that's
Sure.
totally new.
Yeah.
I'll tell an old one that's a Boulder story that people will know some of the, if you know Boulder, you know some of the people, but will understand how this was something I'd never seen before. Uh, it's in the middle of the Christmas season, so it must be like December 15th, right? After Black Friday, but before Christmas. The company is Sphero, which sells a consumer product. It's a super hot, holiday sale thing. I get a panicked call from Paul Barbarian, who's the CEO. And Paul says, in a very, again, panicked is only the word I can use for it. He says, I think everybody's safe, but the second floor of our building just collapsed. And we can't get into the building because the fire people are here and they won't let us go back into the building to get any of our stuff. Including, a whole, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And and I said, I don't have any idea what you do. You listen to the firemen, whatever they're telling you is what you got to do. I'm like, just take a deep breath. Make sure everybody's safe is step one. I think everybody's safe.
Yeah.
Well, like count noses. Like just, okay. Call me back, after the firemen decide. And then he calls me back, 30 minutes later. I wasn't in Boulder, so I couldn't like run over and check. He calls back. He's a little calmer now. He's like, okay, everybody's okay. We got everybody's out of the building. And the firemen have said the second floor did collapse. Nobody got hurt on the first floor because there was nobody on the first floor because it wasn't rented. Lucky. It's a beam, structural beam in the building. And this is a Class A building. A structural beam has broken. And they're not going to let any of us back in because they're concerned about it. And hey, that's a problem because, I don't know, 100 people in the building or something like that. It's like, like this is free. Everything's in the cloud. You just go to your laptop at home and whatever. He's got, some of the systems, can you help? Do you have any ideas? I didn't, other than empathy. But, okay, I never thought of that one before, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was going to call me at 2 PM in the middle of the big selling season to say our building fell down. But it can be things like that. I have hundreds of those kinds of stories, and I think anybody that's been doing this for a long time, where it's like, yeah, I didn't expect that.
I mean, there's some.
A recent one, I think for a lot of people was on whatever the day that I can't remember what it's called anymore, but that Trump put up his big tariff numbers,
Sure.
and had this big press conference, and everybody knew tariffs were coming.
Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of expected the China tariffs to be, high. I don't think anybody expected some of the other ones on that list, like Vietnam. What
Right.
well, I've been moving all my manufacturing from China to Vietnam for the last, year anticipating, or the last 6 months anticipating this happening. And Vietnam's higher than China. What's up with that? You know, those moments where you're like, okay, let's just go deal with this now.
Do you remember with the tariffs, didn't they place a tariff on an island solely inhabited by penguins? I think.
Yeah, that was crazy shit. I mean, that was in the category of crazy shit.
Yeah.
But think about it, like each day, like today is, what are we, Thursday? I mean, I haven't encountered my thing yet today.
Yeah.
But there will be something.
My litmus test is, well, did anyone die and did anyone go to jail? If neither of those things happen, that's
good. That's good insight. It's like the story in the book that I opened the book with. Maybe we'll end on this, but the story from Len Fassler, where I'm having the collapse of the internet bubble. My world is miserable because not only am I co-chair of 2 public companies that are under great distress, I'm on a couple of other public company boards. Every one of the public companies is miserable. The 2 of the public companies that I'm co-chair of, I was a co-founder of. So there's a lot of emotional stuff in that for me. I'm working as hard as I know how to work to try to make something sensible out of what's going on. And I'm on another 20 something boards of private companies because of all that. It's just insane. And I look back on that period of time and I have no idea what I was trying to prove to myself or to anybody else and whatever. It's just ridiculous. But in this moment, I'm at Len's house. He bought my first company. We're co-founders of this company and co-chair. He's 32 years older than me. I'm in my mid-30s. And I'm just dejected. I've spent the night. We're about to go have another shitty day together, dealing with a whole bunch of crap, trying to just salvage something out of what is this complete collapse of the internet bubble. And he comes and he sees me sitting sort of dejected at the breakfast table on his kitchen. And he notices right away. He says, Brad, well, what's wrong? You okay? And I just, I unload a little bit. Shitty this, shitty that. And he just puts his arms around me, gives me a big hug, and he says, Brad, they can't kill you and they can't eat you. Suit up. Let's
Yeah.
go to work. And
Yeah.
I mean, that was in 2001. And I think about that any day that I wake up feeling, oppressed by work or, whatever's going on. I'm like, can they kill me? I don't think so. Can they eat me? Nah. All right. We'll go
Yeah.
deal with it.
I love it. Well, Brad, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on,
My
and
pleasure.
really
I did
enjoyed.
not I did not change my shirt in front of you today, so that's a blessing. And
Well, I
and
didn't have a video camera. I just had still photo.
you gave me something new to think about, which is I'm gonna go think a little bit more about the Bill Murray of venture capital and see if that resonates with my the person who I test all of my weird things with, named Amy, who
There you
is
go.
very quick to tell me that is a dumb idea, Brad. Do not say that ever publicly anywhere, especially on a podcast. Or
If
she'll
Amy
say,
says that, then
"Oh no, you can
I
leave it
beg
in.
her
It's
forgiveness.
yeah, it's been recorded." If she says, maybe that kind of could work.
Well, you know what? It's like I said to you in the pre-recording. Hey, if I say something stupid, and hey, Michael, don't say that or whatever.
No,
Well,
it's all been recorded now, and you have
yeah.
it to do with it what you wish.
Well, and make you look good. That's what I wish. So everyone, go pick up a
Good,
copy of Give
good
First.
luck. Good luck with that.
Too self-deprecating. Pick up a copy of Give First. Go to Amazon, or maybe even better, just check out your local bookstore. Support the little guys. And there you have it. Thank you all for listening to Between Two COOs. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and a very special thank you to Brad Feld for joining me. Tune in
My
next
pleasure.
time for the next chat. It may be with another incredible author. You never know. It might be a COO. Who knows? And if you have a minute, leave a review so other people can get great advice from phenomenal COOs or entrepreneurs like Brad. Thanks for listening. And until next time, so long.